One of the things that I listen a lot from Meteor community members is that it gives them power to be very productive in short periods of time, allowing them to deliver more and focus on what really matters for them. Hey, I'm Gabs, developer advocate here at Meteor, and today we're going to talk to Gavin, a guy that built a restaurant management system called Sizzles, and he did all by himself from the beginning to the end, and it's now running in more than 30 different venues. Gavin says that Meteor is the reason behind he was able to do a lot of very complex stuff in the system by himself. So let's understand why he chose Meteor, what are its advantages, what's behind his architectural decisions, and also let's see a demo of the product.
Hi, my name is Gavin Burke. I'm a developer out of Powell, Ohio, which is a suburb of Columbus, Ohio. And I've been using Meteor for probably 10 years, I would say, since pretty early versions, and super impressed with the product and have been with it every step of the way. And it's simplified a lot of things for me.
And what's your background, man? How did you become a developer?
So I've been writing software in general for about 20 years. I started with JP Morgan Chase a long time ago doing back-end work, a lot of Java and service-oriented stuff. And then I kind of moved into the front-end space more, again, about 10 years ago. Got real interested in web tech and I haven't really looked back. So I'm a developer with pretty broad, I would say, exposure to web technologies. Most recent projects, other than these personal projects we're going to talk about today, which are Meteor, I've also done a lot of React, a lot of Vue, a lot of Angular, node.js on the back end. Relatively new things like Prisma and Zustand, and all kinds of some of the cool new projects that are out these days.
Yeah, and how did you stumble upon Meteor?
It's a funny story, actually. The first time I came across it, I was hiring for a role at my day job, and we had a take-home kind of kata for users to produce a solution in, and we told them they could choose anything they wanted. And I got a submission that was written in Meteor, and I was like, "What is this?" I had never even seen it, heard of it, didn't know how to run it. I had to go figure out, like, download the executable and get it running. And then like I was so impressed in such a short period of time. Like, wow, the amount of code that's here for what's actually being produced, I've never seen anything like this. And so I started looking into it more closely at that point and haven't looked back.
That was around 2015.
Yeah, probably maybe even 13. Could be as long ago. I don't want to date myself by saying, that I've been using it longer than it's actually been in existence, but it's been a while.
And at this time, was Meteor like popular? Did you realize that it was something different there that was growing, or was just another framework?
I would say that it was probably at its peak popularity at that point. I don't mean to throw shade at all. I think the project is amazing, but I do think that it has lost popularity in recent years, and I think some of the great steps that the core team is doing to improve it will go a long way. Hopefully, we can gain some market share back. But yes, I think at that time it was more popular than I realized, for good reason.
And did you get involved with community stuff or went to any specific Meteor events at the time, or this was something that took a little while before you start really following what was going to happen in the community and so on?
I did start following the community. I didn't participate in any events, and I haven't, unfortunately, sad to say, embarrassing for myself, I haven't contributed back to the community nearly as much as I feel I should have, given how much I have value I have extracted from the community.
Oh, let's talk about that value you have extracted then. What does Meteor did and does for you nowadays?
Yeah, so I'd love to talk about the application, the main application that I've been working on these days. For the last 3, maybe 4 years or so, I've been working on restaurant management suite of tools that handle kind of everything that happens day-to-day operations inside of a restaurant, and also have a section on kind of administering for the managers and the owners of the companies, the franchise companies that run, as well as the owners of the corporate stores and different tools available for all levels of engagement. The whole thing is backed by Meteor, and it's all real time, and is a really fantastic application. It's live, has been in production for several years now, used by 30 plus locations, and I think 6 or 7 plus franchise companies. So lots of engagement, and it's a great project.
These are different web apps for specific parts of the process of having a restaurant. If I have a restaurant, like, and I want to hire you, who is your who are your customers?
Yeah, so we have basically one customer that is, this is a bespoke application for this customer. They're called Scramblers. They are a breakfast, lunch, and brunch restaurant in the Midwest. Started in Toledo, Ohio, and have grown kind of all over the Midwest, as far down as some locations in Florida now, some locations in Maryland. So spreading at this point, continuing to grow. It's one main entity, and then again, the entity is called Scramblers. They also have a fast casual version, which is called City Egg, which are more of like, rather than table service, it's more of kiosk based self-service ordering. Think more like McDonald's or Chipotle, or the kind of fast casual concept. And the software that I have written works for both of those use cases. And then again, as I mentioned, it is corporate owned. There are several corporate stores, and then it's also a franchise model. So there are several franchisees that have their own stores, and account for their books completely separately, but still all within the same Meteor application.
All the same media application. Go in and you did all by yourself.
So I'm the sole technical person on the project. Absolutely, yes. There is a very smart, very sharp guy at the corporate Scramblers who is kind of the voice of priority, and what needs to be worked on next, and what, the voice of the customer, the people that are using the system, so the wait staff, for example, and the cooks and things like that, as well as the guests who come in to actually eat at the restaurant. So he's sort of the product owner, project manager role, and the two of us partnered together, and yes, that's it.
How did this happen, man? Were you building a specific software for restaurants and you found a customer, or you first found the customer and then you decide, hey, maybe I can do something for you, or how was it?
Right. So I first found the customer, and started out years ago, 12 years ago, maybe, with the first application that I wrote for this customer, which was, the very, very first thing we did was sort of a file sharing thing, like was not Meteor long ago. And then that progressed into an accounting application that they were using for some bespoke reports that they wanted to run. And then that turned into inventory management, and it turned into this and turned into that. And eventually it was like, hey, can you use the same methodology that you've used toward all of these other things toward a new full restaurant management solution? And the answer is yes.
You didn't even think, like, I can do it.
I definitely had conversations about, like, what is the operations model going to look like? Because I can't be like, I still have a day job. This is all nights and weekends work. I can't be on the clock when things go down. And so we had to have lots of conversations like that. But from the perspective of building the application, at that point, when I took on this project, I had already knew that Meteor was going to be there to support what I needed to do. That I've already done lots of proof of concepts. I had already done a separate application that was not nearly as big in scope, but big enough to know I can make this work.
Do you remember how long it was from the time you started doing it, started building it, until you put the first version in production?
I would say, I don't actually remember. I would say 3 months, maybe. Yeah, like a quick turnaround. And obviously, the first things in production, we started with one location, and it was a lot of hybrid stuff. Like, well, we're running in parallel. They're still doing things the way they used to, but we're also trying this new thing. So it wasn't like a big bang. Hey, everyone switch over. We're using the new system. It took a longer time to get there. I'd say maybe a year, but to get something working, yeah, pretty quickly, very quickly.
So they had another system previously.
Yes.
And how was it?
Yeah, they were using a system. It was called Dinerware, and it was a totally different architectural model. So it was all in store. So each location had their own kind of Dinerware server that ran the one or two point of sale terminals that they had. And there was no, like, ticketing was done all by hand, writing on a piece of paper, putting the check, the piece of paper back to the cooks so that they can see what they need to cook. And it was all, not done digitally. But of course, they did have a point of sale, as I mentioned, that would aggregate, over the course of the day. But basically, they would have to run reports that they could only run once a day. It was at the end, and it was not nearly as real time, and not even close to as feature rich as the solution we've come up with.
And how was your process of building it and making people test? Imagine that you probably started small, building smaller features and then asking people to try it and then progressively replacing. I mean, that's what I would do. I don't know if that was your approach. I'm thinking.
So what I'd say is we were fortunate to have kind of a captive audience. This isn't like a B2C play where we're trying to get consumers. We had the ability to say, listen, this is what this restaurant uses, and you are a member of the wait staff or a member of the cook staff or whatever. You're going to use the system and let us know what problems you run into, because we can get them fixed very quickly. But we didn't have to market, so it wasn't quite as difficult to gain adoption as some other projects that I've worked on.
This is one of the hardest parts, or at least some unexpected parts when people try to build startups, right? That is, okay, building technical stuff is hard and you can solve really complex problems while you're at it, but you have to sell as well, right? You have to acquire customers, you have to have revenue, and you have to have a lot of stuff that it's like bunch of work. And in your case, you already had the customers, they were bought on the idea. You just had the I would say easy task to. You said it was easy. I guess you mentioned that you had confidence on what you were going to do, right? And that has to do with Meteor somehow.
Yeah, so I've written several applications in other contexts where it's basically the data layer. It's a couple of huge advantages that Meteor brings to the table. One is the data layer in general, and the tight Mongo integration and mini Mongo on the client and DDP and all those wonderful things. The other is the build ecosystem, the Atmosphere packages and the build tool itself just make things so standard and so easy to get up and running. Those two things together have made a huge difference. I've built many other applications in many other contexts where so much of that stuff has to happen. It has to happen anyways, but it has to happen manually. There's no automated syncing mechanism that you can't just subscribe to a collection and know that you're going to get it. And if your client happens to lose connectivity, it will retry itself. If you are trying to send a message to the server and it doesn't go through, that will retry itself. There's so much fault tolerance built into the system that make it so that developers can focus on the business problem at hand as opposed to the technical details and frustrations that can come up from that.
What's the state of this project right now? Is it still a part-time thing, or are you full-time on it?
It's still part-time, but it is definitely production ready and has been running in production for a long time. I mean, there's plenty of new features to work on. I can reference a few things that I've done even in the past week or two, new features, as well as at the beginning of this conversation, we talked about how I just ran a massive upgrade of everything. So I went from Meteor 1.12 to 3.0.4. And in doing that, of course, that upgrades.
1.12.
Yes, it's been a while. And in doing that, of course, it upgrades Node, and the version of Node wasn't running on the version of Ubuntu that I was using. So I upgraded Ubuntu. I upgraded Nginx. I upgraded Mongo from 4.4 to 7. I upgraded everything, the entire infrastructure. And of course, a lot of things shook out from that. But now, after going through that process, it's running like a top, and it allows for new features that I've wanted to get on the back burner, or get off of the back burner onto the front burner, but I haven't been able to because we've been stuck on Node 12. So one example of that is in our online ordering experience, we want users to be able to log in and see what they've previously ordered and see their reward balance and all those types of things. And that works. We have Meteor accounts for users, and they can log in via username and password. But I wanted pass keys because they're the new thing. They're very, very secure and gaining popularity. And the problem is the version of the tooling that supports passkeys requires node 18 at least, and we were stuck on 12. And it's just one of many things that we're like, maybe someday, maybe if Meteor upgrades eventually, we'll be able to move to a newer version of Node, and then I can have passkeys. And sure enough, I'm on 20 now, and I built passkeys last week, and they're awesome.
And the process of migrating from 1.2 to the newest, the most recent version, how was it?
Yeah, so I think I just explained a little bit, at least in the sense of it required changing everything because so much of the infrastructure updated. But and that's a good thing. The biggest pain points I would say are basically twofold. Number one is the move from fibers to promises. Definitely the right move. I'm very happy with the direction of the team. I'm happy that that has happened. I'm happy that we're done. I'm done personally with this project with fibers, but it does mean every single call to the database, of which there are thousands, they are now asynchronous. I need to await their promise, and that function that calls them also needs to be asynchronous, and anything that calls that needs to be asynchronous all the way up the stack until you hit the Meteor method. And that was a lot of change. I probably touched 70% of my lines of code for one reason or another in this upgrade. So that was a bit of a pain point, but again, I think the right move, and I'm happy about it. The other pain point that I ran into personally has to do with the deprecation and subsequent removal of the HTTP server-side client. We have several third-party APIs that we need to call out to, and Meteor HTTP has been my go-to because it's very easy. I understand moving toward the idea is, why do we need HTTP when we have fetch? Fetch is native, let's just use it. And yes, but also it changes the API, and you get different objects back when you run fetch. One of the biggest kind of time consuming things that I ran into with this upgrade had to do with exactly that, where one of the jobs that runs asynchronously makes a call out to a server somewhere, actually several calls, thousands of calls, and the call was working, and the server upgraded correctly what it needed to do, but I fumbled the response. So I get back all these responses because you get a slightly different shaped object. Whoops. Now I've got, instead of updating in my database that all these calls were made, I didn't. I threw a bunch of exceptions in production. So shoot. So the next day I had to go in and reconcile thousands of calls. And all right, these ones made through, these ones didn't. It was manual effort, all because we switched from HTTP, and really all because I didn't test that particular flow well enough. So lesson learned, but that type of thing happens.
But right now everything is migrated, is working smoothly, everything is fine.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, yeah. I don't know if you prepared for this, but I was gonna ask if you wanna show something, if you wanna show.
Okay, yeah, I can definitely do that. So this is, let me just start by saying kind of high level. Picture this. The reason that the dimensions are as such is that this typically runs in a browser, a Chrome browser, on an Android device. So this is like a tablet that wait staff employees at the locations that the Scramblers restaurants carry around. They carry them in their pouches, or sometimes some of them put them on slings on their shoulder and stuff like that. This is their interface into the whole application, and every server gets their own tablet for the day. All of the tablets are already authenticated via Meteor accounts to the server. They're authenticated using a location specific credential. So that's where the main credentials lie. The rest of this is just to allow for anyone that's working that day can pass tablets around and use each other's, because all you need to do to identify yourself is type in a 4-digit PIN. So that's the way that this works. So if you type in the wrong PIN, for example, you just get unrecognized PIN, try again, no big deal. But this is a nice thing that even if they aren't logged in, or don't have any tables or anything, they can still tell what's the coffee today, what's the soup of the day today, and then there's notes that their leadership can write to them to remind them about certain events, things like that. All that happens just on this kind of lock screen. Let's go ahead and sign in as I've got a user that is myself. So I'm just 1111 for simplicity's sake for demo. The first thing I'm greeted with here is welcome Gavin. It knows that 1111 is tied to me, and it asks me to clock in. And this is important because it demonstrates that not only is this order management, but it's also timekeeping and labor management and payroll. all of this as part of the system. So I'm going to clock in as a server today, and it takes me to this kind of main screen, which is where, like, the most common use case at this point is a couple of people walk in the front door and they need a seat. So the first thing you do is you say new order, and it brings up a map of the restaurant. It's condensed, of course, to fit on the screen as such, but you can kind of get the gist of, like, the door would be here, the host station is here, and then all of the tables that are currently sat. The tables are all green right now, which indicates that they are all available to be sat. If there were someone with an open order or an open check at that table, it would be red. If there is no longer an open check, but there was previously, and we don't know what state it's in as to whether it's been bussed, whether it can be sat again, for example, then it would be an amber color. So throughout the day, the host or any of the waitstaff servers can determine what seats are available. So we'll go ahead and choose a table, like table 13, for example. And we said that there were two people. So the first thing we do is add a second seat. So we have two seats. And we'd say maybe on the first seat, they're going to order coffee. That's very typical. And maybe on the second seat, they want decaf. Also very typical. And it's as simple as that to place their drink order. When you're done with the drink order, they typically hit the little paper airplane here that says send it to the kitchen. The idea is, like, if it were a piece of paper, you'd be sending it right back. That creates a record that is their table. And of course, throughout the day, you have many, many tables that will show up. The next thing after you bring the drinks is your table would likely want to order some food. So we'll go back into the same interface, and this is the whole order accumulation screen. So let's say the person wants an omelet. They want the ultimate omelet, for example. Got all your different options of adds and removes and substitutions and sides. And so we'll say they want white toast and they want yogurt, and we'll add to order, and it shows up here. And then we'll do the same thing, just one more, like, how about a breakfast sandwich, zesty smokehouse with a side of rye toast. Add to order.
I just would like to mention that the interface is very simple. I could use that.
Wonderful. That's wonderful to hear. Thank you. That's a great compliment. This also shows then the food total, the tax, the check total, all available, very easy to see and to convey to your guests. Then again, when they're ready to say, okay, I want the cook line to start cooking, they hit the paper. Hear that very loudly. That is part of the cook screen. So that noise wouldn't typically happen to the wait staff, but it is important that we notify the cook screen that, hey, you've got a new order, you've got to cook. So let's go take a look at that. So this is the cook screen, and it shows next order. So they touch the next order button to see the order, and it pops up. Why doesn't it pop up automatically? The reason is because there's typically two uh, cook's sides on the same line, and they're basically mirrors of each other just for efficiency, for speed. And so rather than having orders pop up directly to the left side or the right side, we put it in a queue and we let them communicate and say, I'll take this one, you take the next one. So that's why it shows up as that button, and it makes that noise, the cash register noise. Hey, you've got to go cook.
This interface is probably going to run on a bigger monitor in the kitchen.
Correct. It's on a big touchscreen monitor. It's about this size. Honestly, it's a little bit bigger probably, but the dimensions are fairly similar. But it is touchscreen, so they can, tap. They touch on here and they get extra options of things that they can do. So some examples are like, if the cook has a question about something on this, they can say notify server, and they touch notify server. And if we switch back to the server tablet, we see table 13, question from the cook, and it will buzz in their hand as well. Even though this it's all a web application, there is no native app as part of this. But using relatively new web standard APIs, we can have things like notifications and buzzing and all that good stuff. So this would tell this particular server, oh, I got to go back to the kitchen and find out what question they have and answer it for them. Other things they can do are they can see a cookbook, which is super helpful for relatively new cooks. If they're like, I don't remember how to make an ultimate omelet, this is what it's supposed to look like. Here are the ingredients that are inside it. Here's more information about how to actually cook it. And they can see all of this on the same screen as they're already looking to understand what orders they need. Other options are like, you can fast track if there's a ton of orders at the same time, but one of them, we made a mistake earlier and we need that to be high priority. You can click a button that puts a fire on it, makes it fast tracked. There's several other things like that. We don't need to get into all of them, but suffice to say,
I wonder that a lot of this details, as like fast track, is something that you didn't predict in the first versions, and that you were figuring out along the way, right? When problems appeared.
you got it. That's absolutely true. All right, so let's go ahead and we'll finish off this one. So we say complete, and we can switch to another screen. This is the expediter screen. This is really similar to the cook screen, but it's more about the last process of things right before food goes out to the customers. So one example of things that expediters do is they prepare to-go meals by putting them in bags, and they will, for example, print a receipt, and this then they can take that receipt and staple it to the bag or whatever. So they've got plenty of options, things that they can do as well. And then also there's things like they can hit this hot food ready when, okay, it's some of the food has come out or all of the food has come out, but the expediter is not necessarily the person who's going to run the food. There's plenty of wait staff that should be available to do that. But we need to let everybody know that there is hot food ready. So they can press this button. And again, if we go back to the wait staff, we see table 13 has hot food ready. And everybody who is logged in will get this notification. And that's important because we don't care who runs this food. If you've got hot food, you get it to a customer. If you're not busy doing something else right now, get on it. That's the idea.
And by the way that you're showing this, I imagine that the table is connected to the order, and when you update the collection there, it updates also the tables. Okay, so they know where does this food belong. It's not like there's random food ready. That's like the food ready from table 13, and yeah, everything's connected. Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah. You got it dead on too that, and we can talk certainly about the back end, the architecture and the data layout, but the main thing, like, I mean, there's probably 30 different collections, but the main collection is called order, and it stores all of the information about any order. And orders have seats, and seats have, items that have been ordered on that seat, and then orders also have checks, and checks have payments, and like it's a cascading beautiful Mongo document that represents everything about an order, and is used to reactively update everything throughout the restaurant. Okay, let's go ahead and finish out the expediter so we can see at this point this table has been served, and that's great. So the next step would be your guests are happy, they're eating, or maybe even they've finished eating, and it's time for them to pay. So this is a typical table service type restaurant where you can print out like here's what the bill is, and set it down at the table, and they'll put a credit card down, etc. Like you've seen most of the time. But as far as the server or the waitstaff interface to it, it all starts from this button, the $ button that handles everything check related. So lots of things that we can do with checks. For example, right now we have 2 seats. We could split those into 2 different checks just by saying all seats on separate check. Then we'd have 2 checks, and then we can cash those out separately, for example. Or we could split by percentage. Sometimes we get people who say, it doesn't matter how much the check is. I'll take 50%, you take 50%. Okay, that's fine. We can accommodate. Same with amount. I want to pay $10 and they want to pay the rest. Okay, whatever. We can combine checks. So things like we're at table 13, but those are our kids over there at table 15, and we've got their food too. So we combine it all into one check. We can also print checks. We can add discounts here. There's tons of different types of discounts. This is really cool because it allows for the simple stuff like dollar off or percent off, $5 off, 10% off, whatever. Or we can pre-can certain ones that get used all the time. Like we offer a senior discount, which is 15%. And so that's like a just tap this one and you've got it without needing to type 15 to make sure that you get the right dollar percent amount. We can also run promotions via this. So like one of the promotions that we have upcoming in February is Free Coffee February, which is awesome for guests who come in. Any coffee item that you order is free, which means that the server has to discount it, and that it would come in here. They would select the coffee item and then do an item level discount to remove 100% of that item. So it's free. So I'm going to actually step into one of these just to demonstrate another feature. If we say like $5 off, that takes us to here. And the button to move forward is, there's nothing else to interact with. This is all just visual, let you know what's about to happen. But the button to interact with says request discount, not apply discount. And that's important because we've got different levels of security throughout our staff. So we have some people that are approvers, and some people that are assistant managers, and others that are managers, and yet others who are none of those special credentials. They're just normal servers or wait staff. So if you're a normal wait staff person, you can't randomly apply $5 off when your friends come in. Those have to go through someone who has the authority to approve it. And that will manifest itself in the same way that the cook notifying the server or hot food ready. It's that notifications mechanism. That's how approvals of discounts work as well. So in this case, the user that I'm logged in as currently has approver rights. So I get to put it on immediately without going through the pending and the approval state, just as a shortcut. Okay, let's talk about then payments. The way payments work, we've got several different options for paying. So this is a Magtech card reader. These are what we use. Magtech is a company that has been producing these types of readers for a long time. You see them in public places these days. That is the vendor that we integrate with for the physical. Basically, it does three things. It will either EMV chip, which is, you dip your credit card in and the chip reads. It does mag swipe, which is where you swipe the mag strip on the back. And it does touch to pay, which is Android Pay, Apple Pay, Blink technology for credit cards, things like that, where you basically just tap it and the payment will go through. So the way these work are sort of interesting because we have them set up throughout any given location. There's 2 or 3 payment terminals, and they're just in different places. And the idea is any server tablet, waitstaff tablet, can talk to any of the payment terminals. You simply walk over to it and you engage with it by clicking the right button. So if I'm in front of payment 1 or payment 2, or sometimes they're called payment front and payment back or whatever, then I know which button to hit. And I can hit it and it will engage with that card reader. The way that works is through the beautiful power of Meteor as well. The whole thing is driven through the centralized Meteor cloud server. So there is no point to point between the tablet and the card readers. Instead, there's a collection, or 2 collections rather, where if you want to engage the card reader, you effectively write to a what I call Magtech events collection. And then there's a very small Raspberry Pi running a very small node application with a DDP client that's connected to the same server that is subscribed to Magtech notifications. And all it does is take the notifications and forward them directly via USB to the device. And then it takes responses from the device and forwards them back to another Meteor collection that I call Magtech notifications. So we have events going to the reader, notifications coming back from the reader. And then when we receive notifications on the server, that's where we engage the payment rails, make the calls to the payment gateways to determine, adjudicate whether the payment went through or not. And then when we have a success or a failure, then those notifications get propagated back to the server tablet, and it all happens instantaneously. It's amazing. It's very, very good, very reliable system, and we've tried multiple iterations of ways to make this work, and I'm delighted where we've ended up. It's very reliable, very fast, and it's wonderful.
The Raspberry Pi you mentioned, it runs Meteor inside of it, or it's Node with a DDP implementation you mentioned, right?
It's not actually Meteor. It's just Node with the DDP implementation. That was like an open source project that works great. I mean, it requires that you authenticate, as it should. That's important. But once you're authenticated, you can subscribe just like you would in a Meteor client application. But it's effectively a server because it runs on a Raspberry Pi, not on a client device. So where it is a client to the Meteor application, it is a server to the Magtech reader. So it kind of functions in between.
So the MagTech reader reads the data of the card, connects with this Raspberry Pi that sends the notification to the server where the tablet is subscribed to, right? That's the flow.
Yeah, and then the request can be made to our payment gateway with the data, that what's called an ARQC that comes from the card. We can forward that on. It's already encrypted. It's encrypted at the device for PCI compliance, so we never actually see any of the credit card information or anything like that. We forward it directly to a payments gateway that decrypts it. It is also by the same company that runs Magtech. And so that's why they have the ability to encrypt at the device and decrypt on their own server. So we stay out of that completely, which is great for PCI compliance. Yeah, let's move on. So I wanted to mention just a couple other payment rails in case these are the card present payments. So the ones that you actually have a card and you use the reader. If there, for whatever reason, these payment rails are down, which happen occasionally, right? It's a payment gateway. Sometimes we get 500s from them for no reason, things like that. We have another option, which is manual card entry. And this allows you to basically type in the 16 digits. But this is a card not present flow. The idea is it's a little bit more expensive because you're bearing the extra price of the risk that the fact that the card may not be present, but it's really no different than an online order flow, which we also provide online ordering. And this is basically the same payment rails we use for that. But it is a totally different gateway. It's a totally different vendor. So the chances of both of them being down at the same time is extremely low, which is nice. And then we have another fallback is like Square, which we don't really need to get into, just another payment rail option. It's important to mention this one, Sizzle gift card. So when we started this project, we were using a vendor for gift cards. There's several big name vendors out there that provide that service, and they do so for a hefty fee. But what they're doing is not very complicated, and something that we recognized pretty early on. We can do this. We can issue our own Sizzle branded gift cards and maintain their balances and transaction histories and reconciliations and all the things that are associated. So that's what we've done. So at this point, most of the guests who come in with a gift card do so with a Sizzle gift card that is native to our own application, which makes redemption via an interface like this dead simple. They come in, it actually turns on a camera. I'll just do it right now. It turns on a camera, they've got a barcode. They put the barcode up, and theoretically, it reads. Sometimes it, there we go. It reads, and then from there, they say, "Okay, here's how much is on that. Is the amount you would use. You can add a tip right away. You're off to the races." And all of the rest of how is it reconciled and all of those things are taken care of via the rest of the system, which I will get into shortly. So that's a really cool feature. And then the last mechanism for payment is cash. This is basically just a calculator. How much money do they give me? How much do I owe them back? Very simple. But it's important for accounting purposes to know how was this paid for. Okay, so I'm going to, just for demonstration purposes, I have on this machine, like we talked about, the Raspberry Pi that runs that Node application that communicates via Node HID USB directly to the Magtech reader. I have an instance of that running on my local machine just so that we can demonstrate it here. And I will click this and it says it's going to connect to the reader. I'll pull up the reader here and I'm going to just use my phone because I've got touch to pay on it. I'm going to touch. The card was read correctly. Processing, please wait. And we're done. It's as simple as that. And it has, at that point, it prints two copies of the receipt, one for the merchant and one for the guest. And then the guest obviously typically signs, they add a tip, etc. And
But it prints. Where does it print?
it prints to so the restaurants have a number of printers, the same setup really as the card readers. USB, not USB, sorry, Raspberry Pis that are on the network. And what happens is there's a print job collection in our Meteor environment where they here's what we want to print, send it up to the Meteor environment. The server actually translates the text that was built via JavaScript into ESCP, which is a print specific language that runs on Epson printers and others. And then we can, on that Raspberry Pi, we can open up a port directly to the printer and send all those bytes and they print out immediately. That's the way the printers work.
Printers are a different kind of thing, right? Different animal.
Yes, for sure. Yeah. We used to use uh, E, what was it called? EPOS, which is like a system that Epson provides for running prints, but there were a lot of issues, a lot of problems with it, and we ended up going to the much lower level ESCP, where it's literally you can telnet into one of those printers and like type things and it will print it. It's as simple as that when you send the right commands and byte strings and things. So that's the way it works now, and it's very fast and very reliable as compared to where it was before. So that's it basically. That's a typical user experience, coming in and eating and paying. I want to take a minute just to show some of the interesting things about this. Is the admin interface.
That's what I was going to ask. Where's the admin interface?
Yes. So it's right here. You can see there's tons of different things. These collapse, and when you first load it, they're all collapsed. Um, but this is super helpful for like the example store that I've been using is called Hamilton. So I'm going to use that one. And you can see gross sales, that 3236 is the order that we just closed out with 2 seats on it, and et cetera, et cetera. This obviously grows. It's live anytime. Anyone can come out here, see these numbers. They change throughout the day, of course, and that's super helpful for understanding, well, how many open checks do we have? Are we expecting another wave of customers? Can I let some staff go home, et cetera, et cetera. So this is used constantly. We've got tons of other reports out here. We've got things like manage orders, which I'll show again, Hamilton. This is the order that we just placed. The server was Gavin, that's me. There were 2 seats. We can see what was on the order. We can refund it if for whatever reason. We can print the receipt again, things like that. And this will just grow and grow and grow all day long for whatever day we have selected, which is great. You can reopen orders and have, pay in different ways and all kinds of stuff. We've got a user management section, which I'm actually not going to click on because my test database has some real users in it, and I don't want to dox anybody. But you can imagine it's basically user management. We've got location management, which these are some of the actual locations. This is Hamilton, the one we've been playing with. And this is basically just some settings that we can set, turn off or on online ordering, or set up, turn off or on the wait list, depending on if we want to accept external entries to the wait lists and things like that, or modify the open and close time. Sometimes, like, hey, we're closing early because of such and such, and because we're closing early, we don't want to accept online orders anymore, and whatever. We've got labor report, which I'm not going to click on again for the same reason. There's users in there. We've got kitchen statistics. This is super interesting about, like how long on average were orders taking in the kitchen at each location on the left side versus the right side. How long were they at the expo station? Like this is where we can start to see trends and things. Velocity report, which is basically the velocity of sales of specific items. So like which items are selling the best and worst. Lots of information there. We've got discounts reports, which I'm again not going to click on because that's user specific, but it's basically how many senior discounts are we giving out, and free birthday meals and all those types of things. We've got sales by time, which is not going to look very impressive right now, but it's basically just a histogram of throughout the day, how, like what hours did money come in and what hours did orders come in. We've got gift card reconciliation and bank reconciliation reports. Those are important for the back office to make sure that money is being sent and received at the right places. We've got waitlist stuff. We've got managing gift cards, to being able to add and remove transactions arbitrarily if we need to, and correct things and all that kind of stuff. We've got, this is an interesting one from a media perspective. I don't know as I'm going to be able to demonstrate it super well, but this is the layout editor, where when we clicked on new order, we saw this. And you can come in here and say at any time, like, these 2 tables, actually, we just pushed them together. So, and immediately through the magic of Meteor, that has already taken place on all of the tablets. If you come in here and say new order, then these tables have been pushed together.
Okay, so this map is a collection that has positions. Okay.
And then you can also, it's just, interestingly enough, like I can add even a new table. So there's 36 tables on this one right now. If I add a new foretop, and I'll just place it here, and I'll call it table 37. And if I go and immediately look, I can seat people at table 37 just that fast. Like it's all there. It's all live. It's beautiful.
And one thing that I haven't asked, this is the system for scramblers, but you have a name for it for this project, like.
Yeah, the system's called Sizzle. Anyways, I think that kind of covers it. There's also a section that I could show on kiosk-based individual ordering, but it's all kind of the same idea. You get the picture that These are just different interfaces: admin interface, the cook interface, the server interface, and the kiosk interface, and the online ordering interface to the same basic set of applications that are all running Meteor, and they're all synchronized on the same Mongo instance or Mongo cluster.
You probably thought about this in the past or maybe now, but have you ever thought about expanding this to other restaurants, other chains other than Scramblers?
It is. It's something that I always kind of pipe dream and find interesting. If there's anybody who views this and is interested in something like this for their restaurant, I'd love to talk. But what I would say is, yes, with my partners at Scramblers, we have considered the idea of expanding it and haven't moved forward with that idea just yet. I think they're enjoying the competitive advantage that they're having for this very inexpensive, comparatively speaking, and very feature rich application.
Is it something that it's you said that you do have a regular job nowadays as well, but do you have plans on turning this into your main source of income?
No, I don't have plans to turn this into my main source of income. It's This is a passion project, nights and weekends, and I think it will continue to be so. I do want to take a moment, if you'll allow me to plug. I don't have a full time job right now. I actually am in the market. I'm looking for something. So if anybody watching this is interested in my skill set or any of the things that we've talked about today, I would love for them to reach out.
Okay, so if anyone wants to hire Gavin, so we're gonna leave your LinkedIn profile here, maybe your LinkedIn profile, and you probably have a website as well, right? You're gonna
I
have.
don't have like a personal website. No,
Oh no,
I
you
have
don't.
several projects, but no portfolio website.
Thank you for your time, and thank you for sharing us. And congratulations on your project. And we're very happy to see that you were able to build all this stuff using Meteor and basically by yourself, right? I mean, you have some person that you mentioned that helps you define features and prioritize, but all the development is made by you, right? So congrats on that. Really cool.
Thank you.